on this computer. Why not? Okay, I think we are officially recording. So welcome all of you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and sit and learn for a little while. I appreciate your time. I'm going to share my screen and go through a short presentation that I have for you. Okay, can everybody see that? Awesome. Okay. So Census Day this year is October 5th, 2022. Census Day is a very important day, so that's why I wanted to meet with everybody to make sure that you understand exactly what it is and why it exists. So without further ado, our agenda for today, we only have 4 sections. What is Census Day and why is it important? How to prepare for Census Day, what to do on Census Day, and then what's next. So what is Census Day and why is it important? Census Day is actually a CalPADS date. So even though this is a SEIS instructional video, it is basically, it's a CalPADS day. So CDE has decided that the first Wednesday of October will give us a snapshot of a typical day in the school year and how many students we have. So there is a lot that we can do in SEIS to prepare, and that's really important. So what gets reported on Census Day? There's important demographic information such as race, ethnicity, whether the students are English learners, how many qualify for free and reduced price lunch, and much more. Census Day is also the date that we use when filling out our personnel data reports later in the school year. I will be sending out reminders about PDR. I think we normally get that in like March or April. It could be as late as May, but when you hear about it, this is the date that we use for that. And that's related to CBED's Information Day, which is the same day as Census Day. But their Information Day it's what's used by CalSAS to review teachers' appropriate placement based on their credentials. So it's a very important day. It's important that we have all of our assignments right in our reporting systems, whether that be SEIS, CalPADS, Aeries, any other programs that you use to report data on your students and your staff. We definitely want to have as clean a data as possible. Why is Census Day important? Fun fact, while most special education funding is based on total ADA, some of the funding your district received is determined by the numbers your district reports for Fall 1. Accuracy in Fall 1 data is crucial. The better your data in SEIS, the fewer errors you and your CalPADS person will need to correct prior to certification. It can also be a bit easier to correct transactions in SEIS before submitting to CalPADS rather than leaving it all for your CalPADS person to fix at the end once you've uploaded data that isn't great, that they then have to turn around and go back to CalPADS, delete stuff, recreate transactions in SEIS, re-upload them. It can be a whole process if we wait that long. So it's important that we have all of our information in SEIS as clean as possible before it goes to CalPADS, because then in the amendment period and everything, you and your CalPADS people won't have to work quite as hard to get all of that data squared away. Any questions so far? Okay. Next section, how do I prepare? To prepare for Census Day, there are several common issues that you can prepare for ahead of time to make reporting easier. We need to make sure that every student that is enrolled in our district through SEIS has an enrollment date, because obviously all of your students should have one in Aeries. And the date in Aeries or any other SIS that you use, I don't know if we're all Aeries districts, but I believe so. That needs to match what's in SEIS. Whether that's enrollment, exit, any of those dates, they all need to match between Aeries and SEIS, because when those are individually pushed up to CalPADS, those dates have to match. Teacher requests, you're going to make sure to process as many of the teacher requests on your dashboard as is possible prior to Census Day, and including up to Census Day morning. The Census Day search that we're going to talk about in a little bit is actually can be run at the end of the day. So you do have time on the morning of Census Day. You don't have to hop on and right at 8 o'clock pull that Census Day search. It may actually be better to wait till the end of the day. Okay, I understand that the transfers can't always be processed. Sometimes that's out of your hands. If a case manager isn't ready to release a record for one reason or another, or if a school, if a district outside of our SELPA isn't ready to transfer the record over to you for one reason or another, I understand not everything can be done, but we need to try. Unaffirmed IEPs and amendments, you are going to want to keep your eye on this section of the dashboard all the time. However, this time especially is crucial because unaffirmed IEPs or amendments do not actually create an IEP transaction that will be pushed up to CalPADS. So it's going to make you look non-compliant, even if you held a meeting on time. If it hasn't been affirmed, it's going to continue to count that clock. So if your IEP was due by, October 1st, and the meeting was held in September, but it wasn't affirmed until after October 1st, it's going to start showing you as non-compliant on your dashboard and to the state if anything is, if no transactions are then uploaded to CalPADS to document that you actually held that meeting. Pending students, you're going to want to go through your pending students carefully, make sure that they are all marked correctly and processed. And if they still are pending, just make sure all of the information in the record is as clean as possible. If eligibility hasn't been determined yet, there's nothing you can do to go in and be like, oh, they're magically eligible if that hasn't been determined. So pending students are allowed on Census Day. That isn't a problem at all, but we need to make sure that all of your pending students are actually pending. And there are some things we can do to remove pending students that have been determined ineligible, or that say the parent never signs the assessment plan, so an assessment is never completed. There are definitely steps to take to clean up that data. And if you have specific questions in certain situations, feel free to give me a call or an email. I am in the office from 7:30 to 4. So I'm usually available during those times. All of this information on this slide, I did pull from Corey Stacy's training materials. For those of you who are new and haven't had a chance to go through any of Corey Stacy's data trainings throughout the state, she is phenomenal. She has been at it forever. In fact, she just retired at the end of June, but we are going to be hosting her back. She's contracting now for another data training in the near future. So I'll make sure everybody knows about that. And there are links to her Google folder later on in the slideshow. And that's why I'm going to share this out, because there are links that you can click on in this PDF to take you to those materials. Okay, CalPADS reportable transactions are created in SEIS and uploaded to CalPADS based on certain criteria. For example, exits from special education, affirming IEPs or amendments, and changes to certain reportable fields. When students transfer into your district, you must go into the record and create an IEP transaction by adopting the student's current IEP before your case managers can create a new transaction. This means that if they're coming from a SEIS district, as a district user, you can go into the student record and, you go into the IEP and you'll click, there's a preview transaction link that you'll click to create that initial transaction to CalPADS, showing that they are in your district, you own them, and you're reporting on them. And then once that's done, an IEP can be held for the student in your district. Without that, they can't actually affirm an IEP if that initial transaction has not been adopted. if they're coming from a out of state or a non-SEIS district, somebody, possibly you, possibly the case manager, it just depends on your district. Somebody is going to need to take that paper IEP or an electronic copy of that IEP and enter it into our IEP documents in SEIS. And then that can be affirmed by the case manager. District users may be able to affirm those. So if it's your task to do that, then feel free to do that and affirm it. Just check with your administration on if that's their preferred method. If a reportable transaction is not created for a student you are reporting on, then the state assumes that you are not serving a student that should be served, which causes errors and compliance issues. You're going to hear a lot about compliance the longer you do this job. I know that a lot of you can verify that the longer you do this job, the more you're going to hear about compliance. There have been many changes this year, and over the last couple of years, there have been quite a few changes that has made our job something that is ever evolving. And they're adding more and more compliance activities that we all tend to be involved in one way or another. So compliance is a big deal. You should also pay special attention to correction amendments. So what happens is if some IEP information is either not correct or needs to be added or something, and that isn't caught before Census Day, that's okay. It does create a little bit of extra work, but it is okay. But to correct those issues, the case manager has to create an amendment. And again, depending on your district, your administrator may prefer that if it's just an update to information that doesn't involve anything, they may have you do it or not. But if it's not fixed before Census Day, then they're going to have to do an amendment and backdate it. So even if it's the end of October, by the time you get around to that particular student, you will still backdate it to Census Day or before. If you do not, it won't actually fix the problem. And then you end up having to reach out to SEIS and they get backlogged. So then you have to wait days, sometimes up to a week for them to be able to process that. So it's always best to encourage your case managers to do that correctly the first time. But I know not everybody listens. So there is a process if it gets messed up. Another important thing is blank SSID. You can run a search in SEIS to determine if your district has any eligible students without an SSID. I've shown a screenshot on this slide of the search criteria. We only had 16 when I looked earlier in the entire SELPA. So good job, everybody. You're keeping clean data, which is wonderful. But if you have 1 or 2 in your district, go ahead and update that. That number should be in Aeries. If it's not in SEIS, it should be in Aeries. Because an SSID has been required for every public school student, including public charters in California since 2005. It does not include, I put at the bottom, SSIDs are only required for public and charter students K-12, so no need to add plan type 150 or 200 to the search criteria. But if you don't have an SSID tied to the student record in SEIS, then when you upload those transactions to CalPads, it's not going to tie it to a student. And the student that it should be tied to is then going to mess up your data compliance because it's going to show that this student should be being served in your district and they're not because it's not tied to their special education record. So it's really important to go through, fill in those SSIDs. If you have a student who is new to California and hasn't received an SSID yet, then or has been in private school their whole school career, then there's a process to go through at CalPads to get an SSID issued. So make sure that if you have to request any, you do it as soon as possible, because my guess is they're going to have an uptick in requests for students who have slipped through the cracks. Okay. All right. In the days leading up to Census Day, you will want to remind your case managers to make sure to populate the percent in out of Gen Ed in the student record. This is very important because it's going to cause a lot of errors for you and your CalPADS data if that is not populated. So you end up with both SPED 389 errors, which are fatal, as well as CERT 167 and 168 errors, which are also fatal, which will prevent your CalPADS people from being able to thoroughly upload and certify your data transmissions because the errors are fatal. Any questions? Okay, we are at Census Day, October 5th, 2022. It is always the first Wednesday in October. I'm thrilled that they finally moved the SEIS conference back a week, because since 2017 and Census Day became a thing, it has been the same week as the CodeStat conference until this year. So it's wonderful that nobody's having to scramble at the conference to process Census Day. What you're going to do on Census Day. It's actually not that complicated of a process in SEIS, although there's more in CalPADS that if that's your responsibility, you're going to have a lot more steps. So Heather DeFeedy, she's the SELPA director in East County SELPA down in San Diego. She's wonderful. She does a lot of great work with state SELPA, and she puts out a lot of information for SELPA directors and data specialists, and she's fantastic. She designed a search for everyone to use on Census Day that pulls all of the information you'll need to verify for all of the students with disabilities in your district. You do not have to wait until Census Day to pull this search. You can use this search pre-Census Day to be able to check your data as a whole and see, are there students that are missing a percent in out, and you can reach out to that student's case manager because it's going to give you a student list for Census Day. You'll run that by going to search, shared searches, and Census Day search. I entered all of the criteria for you because it's a very involved list. So please use that to search and make sure that in the end you do pull it on Census Day, because you're going to work with your CalPADS person to review students. You do not need to send it to me. Hey, Tammy. You do not need to send it to me or anyone at the SELPA unless we request it, but you should keep it for your records somewhere locally or on your network. It's important for you to have. In addition, your district might need to run comparison reports in SEIS. I know that our executive director of fiscal services has me pull them for the entire SELPA and district by district for percent, what is it? Disability by age and or by grade. It gives them a number of students that we serve with certain qualifying disabilities. And that's used for a lot of different things. So you won't have to submit that to us, but if your district fiscal people want that for one reason or another, then those are available to pull up in SEIS. And at the bottom in bold, this is different than the comparison reports in CalPADS. Comparison reports and CalPADS are a different beast. I think that's the 16.8. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are comparison reports and CalPADS. And your districts may not need you to run webinar. Those, but if they do, they're on there.
He just
special note. If you also deal with CalPADS, there are additional things, like I said earlier, that you'll need to do on Census Day. There are linked resources at the end of the presentation to find those things. I might develop a similar presentation to this for CalPADS. However, Corey Stacy has done some really great work in this area already. So I might just send out another link to that folder in particular so people can go through a refresher on that. She's done a really fantastic job. I put an excerpt from Corey Stacy's materials in here that is more geared towards CalPADS, but it may be something that you work with as well. So one of her steps in her process was pull a report of all SPED students from your SIS, which would be Aeries, and then pull a list of all active and pending students from SEIS. So you can do a comparison between the students marked as SPED in Aeries versus SEIS. You will need to investigate the students who are in one and not the other. The object is to make sure that students are correctly marked in both systems for the new school year. If you need to exit from SEIS, use the exit day in Aeries to do so. Do not just use a random date or the beginning of the fiscal year. Once you have compared the SEIS and Aeries lists, you can pull the 16.3 report from CalPADS and check the students in the report against the report you pulled from SEIS on census day and saved. This is important to do because some parents will transfer their student into a district and be completely mum on this student receives special education. Whether that's on purpose or whether that's just an oversight, they thought people knew. You may not have even known to request the SEIS record. You may not be aware that you need to be reporting to CalPADS special education services on a student. And that will again lead to certification errors that you won't be able to clear up quickly sometimes. Because then you have, you may have to actually go in and start holding an IEP. There's a lot involved. So you're going to want to do this early if possible, and then again on census day or shortly thereafter. Make sure I didn't skip a slide. Okay, and then what do I do now? Census day has happened. I've downloaded all of this information. What now? Census day is just the day that your district's Fall 1 data is based on for CalPADS. So Fall 1 is a reporting period. Census day is just the kickoff for Fall 1 reporting period. So you'll be working closely with your CalPADS person to clear up errors for the next few months before final submission and certification by the SELPA can happen. So it isn't just a one and done. It's worth reiterating that all correction amendments for Fall 1 data must be submitted with a date no later than census day. Caution, if this date is not equal or less than October 5th, 2022, it will not fix any of the issues that you're having, and you will have to reach out to SEIS to have them fix every amendment that was affirmed with the wrong date. These will all be done post census day, but they must be backdated to census day or before. Resources. So we're in the home stretch. This is a list of resources. All of these purple things are links, which you'll have plenty of time to click on and go through. Review the below resources as many times as you need to familiarize yourself with what you need to do and why. Those that are underlined or hyperlinked. The state SELPA compliance report for the September is fantastic. There's a lot of information. It talks about Fall 1 and a lot of other things that are going to be really helpful knowledge to have. There is a link here. It's in the report as well, but I thought it was worth calling out. There's a Google sheet with upcoming dates with changes or when certain things like DRDP are due and all sorts of things. So that is a great calendar to keep an eye on. There is a help email at the bottom of the C3 report. Please do not use it. That is for SELPA directors only. So if we can't work through it as data specialists, then we can ask Aaron to reach out for additional help. However, he is on the C3 committee, so he will usually know the answer. Corey Stacy's Google folder. This link right here actually will take you to her folder on Fall 1. So not just the entire state data training folder, but specifically to her Fall 1 training. It has videos and documents for Fall 1. This Fall 1 link will take you directly to her video presentation and end of year that are very helpful. Some of the wording may be out of date. I noticed when I was prepping this and going through her materials, some of it isn't stated how we would state it now. So if you have questions or need clarification, let me know. Do not forget about the admin training materials in SEIS. Sometimes when we're new to a district and new to SEIS, we might just get thrown in and not told any information. The admin materials have just been updated for this school year, so everything in there is current. There's also provider training information that is available in SEIS for your providers. So if you have providers or case managers who are struggling with documentation or how to do things, you can always refer them to the provider materials in SEIS. They have FAQs. I don't necessarily find most of their FAQs very helpful. They're not very thorough in some cases, but their training slideshows are really great. Kim has discovered that there, and I watched them at the very beginning too, but there is a YouTube channel for some very basic SEIS training. They have several short videos on specific topics. So if you're struggling, you can always check out their YouTube channel. And then stay on top of error codes and CalPads. That's a link to their error code document that I pulled from CalPads. It's a Google Doc. It's a Google Sheet. Well, okay, it's not. And it's an Excel file that they uploaded into Google, and that's the link for the Google document. If you download it, it will be in Excel. It's much easier to manipulate that way, so please do that. Also, at the bottom of the CalPads screen where the error list is located, there's a link for known issues in CalPads. So if you're getting errors that are not actually errors, you will either need to report those or check the known issues list to see if they're already aware of it and when the timeline to fix that problem in CalPads is. So as we know, the CalPads redesign has really put a damper on things. It's made it very difficult to stay on top of our reporting timelines because CalPads hasn't been available in some cases to be able to upload that. So just know there are still some ongoing issues, but you know, they're doing their best. Sometimes the directions to correct errors on this error code list are not quite clear. So again, please stay in touch. You can ask each other, you can ask me for clarification on how to actually resolve those errors if the instructions aren't clear. Important contacts. Kim is still new, so she doesn't know a ton in SEIS at this point. I haven't passed her a lot of information yet. However, this presentation is going to be available in the SEIS document library for future reference. So as she learns, she will be available to help and take calls. The SEIS information is there. There is an email address that I have. It's like SEIS-support at something. But you will want to submit your initial request through the contact SEIS button because they ask for specific information to make sure you're all on the same page. They do have a toll-free number there and their hours. And then CalPads, they do have, again, they have a CalPads support email address, but if you email through the service request link in CalPads, then you can go straight and give them all the information they need right away. So, or I'm going to put where I click in here. Oh, I put it, that's the link to their email, calpads-support@cde.ca.gov. If you click on that, you will pop up email that you can get started writing. I don't know if it's on the CDE website. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll move into Q&A. Please, if anybody has an answer, feel free to answer somebody's question. This isn't just me telling you, the limited knowledge I have. No, I think I have a lot more than I do. But if you have answered some questions, please feel free to chime in. We're here to network. And okay, so that is the presentation. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, and now we're going to open up to questions and answers. Remember that this is being recorded, so if you have questions, please ask them now because the chances are it will help other people who watch this that weren't able to attend. So feel free to unmute and just ask your questions. I need like a cricket sound maker. Yeah. So you had asked me previously, Cassie, about including the information that you will need on what you're supposed to pull on Census Day. Does that answer enough of your questions for the moment, or did I leave some stuff out that you also know of?
Well, like I said, I don't know how pull with, like you got to like certain before materials and something what you provide here. I'll have to dig in a little bit before I know down everything.
Sure. One of the things we can do is we can start a Google Drive, or we can do a lot of things to kind of put Q&As out to everybody. Email also works. That way, whoever gets the first knows the answer can chime in. If you don't like group emails, which I get, just let us know how it works. If somebody emails me a question I think it's helpful for everybody, I might go ahead and send that out to my SEIS distribution list with the answer along with it as well. And that doesn't mean that we'll call out who asked me the question. I'll just say I received this question, and here's what me or Aaron or SEIS has to say about it. Okay, great.
Some of you might not know what we have done.
Right. So I've been for the last 2.5 years. I've really just been trying to take in as much information as possible. But as I've gotten questions over the last 2.5 years, I've had to learn that I don't know all the things I don't know. So that's been I know it's been hard when you ask me questions that I just don't happen to know the answer to, and it takes a little time for me to respond with the correct information. But I decided that I want to do the next course CC. I don't think I'm ever going to be school served, but I'm going to do my best to provide you all with the best information in as timely a manner as possible. So I'm here for you. That is what my team's job is to support our districts in data collection and reporting. So feel free to keep in touch, even if you think it's a silly question. It doesn't matter. Even if you know the answer, it's going to be great. Just feel free to send it. It doesn't matter. Thank you, Tammy.
I'm
very much a perfectionist when it comes to knowing things. Standardized testing week in school was my favorite week. I love taking tests because I love to know all the things. So when I don't know something, I feel like a real loser. I know that, but it makes me feel like I just don't know things and I don't like it. Okay, well, I won't keep you any further. If nobody has any live questions, that is fine. Again, we can follow up with any questions via email. Yeah. If you have any parting thoughts, throw them out. Otherwise, I will see you later.
You said that you're going to drop your presentation slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Good job.
Thank you. I hope it was helpful.